Hello, happy Friday, and welcome back to the 43rd Asian American International Film Festival. My name is Winton, and I am joined here for a really, really special event that we're so excited to do, which is distance dining with Junzi, and combining that with one of our films that we're presenting this year, Far East Deep South. So I'm joined with Chef Lucas Sin from Junzi, and I'm also joined by the directors and producers of Far East Deep South, Larissa and Baldwin. Lucas, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit first?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Lucas Sin. I'm the chef of Junzi Kitchen and recently Nice Day Chinese. I am a young kid who likes Chinese food. I'm from Hong Kong. And I run these Chinese restaurants in New York City and New Haven, Connecticut, with the goal of changing people's attitudes and thoughts about Chinese cooking. I think it's a wonderful, diverse, colorful, and vastly exciting cuisine, and I wish people had more respect for the cuisine, so to speak. And I'm really, really excited to work with Far East Deep South and you guys today, because part of our distance dining program, since we started doing this program, is a new mission to figure out what in the world the sort of Chinese diasporic cuisine is. Like, how does Chinese cuisine exist outside of the borders of China? And one of the really important regions that we've been thinking about is China and the South in the US. But I'll pass it on to you guys next.
Yeah, and I think we've had Larissa and Baldwin on a couple times for the festival already, but if you guys give a brief intro and just a little synopsis of your film if people haven't seen it yet.
Well, I'm Larissa Lamb. I'm the director of Far East Deep South, as well as one of the producers. And I decided to make this film because it was about Baldwin's family, and we took a trip to Mississippi 5 years ago, or actually almost six years ago now. And I had no idea there were other Chinese that lived there. And we were looking for his grandfather and great-grandfather's gravesite. And we uncovered all this crazy history about the Chinese in the South during segregation that most of us don't learn in history books. Baldwin, what else do you want to say?
I'm a Cantonese boy.
I love that.
Those of you might know me as Only One, the lyrical engineer. I'm a hip hop artist as well, so I love to rap about dim sum and engineering and just having fun. But yeah, the film Far East Deep South is actually about my family and how we searched for our family roots, and instead of taking us to China, it took us to the deep south of the Mississippi Delta.
And us also talks about what the impact of the Chinese Exclusion Act was on his family and how it kept them separated, and how kind of this film is, uncovering that past so that his dad, who never knew his dad, could find a little bit of answers to what happened to his family. And so we take you on a journey. If you haven't seen the film yet, we hope you check it out at AIFF. A-A-I-F-F. Affectionately. It's a plug. And, enjoy it. It's like dinner and then movie, right? So after dinner, go to the movie.
Yeah, dinner and a movie.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I think this event is actually a little bit different, and it's something that I think we could only do because we're online. And again, we're so happy to have Junzi as a partner and the sponsor for this event and for the festival. So we're going to have a conversation about food, about the South, about the Chinese population, and immigration. And then we're going to have like a bit of a demo for the people in our New York community that did order the distance dining pack. Lucas is going to go through how to properly reheat it and plate it so that you have the best experience that you can. And then the only other thing before we start the conversation is, because Junzi is an amazing partner, they have wonderfully donated one of their essential cooking boxes to be raffled out. So if you're interested in entering that raffle and winning this amazing box of food goodies, there will be a link in chat that you can apply through. The winners will be announced tomorrow night, so you'll have the box sent to you probably by next week. So
Ooh, I'm signing up.
Yeah, do it now.
We're in California. We're not eligible.
Can you deliver to California?
No. Yeah, the box goes nationwide.
Whoa! Okay.
So even if you're not in the New York area and you can't eat the meal that we're preparing tonight, you can at least have some of the ingredients, some snacks as well that the lovely people at Junzi have curated together in this great box. So
that is awesome.
Yeah, it's so great, and it's such a joy to be able to do this because yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this in person for sure. So yeah, I will kind of just start off. Like Lucas, you watched the film. What drew you, and then what inspired you to choose the menu tonight?
Yeah, so I've been, I'll be perfectly candid. I've been thinking for a very, really long time about what the relationship between sort of Asian or specifically Chinese and Black cooking is, especially because of the huge amount of social justice movements and the urgency of that conversation. My question for myself was always, what can a chef do? What can a Chinese do? What can a Chinese chef, a Cantonese boy, do in this social conversation? And so I've been talking to a lot of Black chefs about what that connection could possibly be, because it's surprising to me that that sort of intersection has never been explored before. That's how we sort of stumbled in on this yaka recipe. It was originally a dish that we devised with a chef, an amazing chef by the name of Kia Damon. Kia Damon used to be the chef of Lolito and Cherry Bomb here in New York. She's a very, very young chef, but she is from Louisiana. She's from New Orleans. And we were talking about this yaka dish because it's called yaka, which is surprisingly a Chinese name, obviously. So that's Louisiana, and that's the South. And thinking about this dish, you're reading a little bit more about the history of the dish, and you realize this massive, massive story of Chinese people in the Deep South. I think there have been articles sort of obviously before this film trickling here and there that all basically start off, all these articles that are about Chinese people in the Deep South start with, wait, what? Like, you're like, wait, there's a huge population here, and like there's a whole culture, and they have cool accents. What's going on, right? and then you read about all these things, and you come to all these conclusions because you're reading books and all these things. But watching the film was the first time that I felt such a deep connection, and that the first time that it's been a deep, personal, intimate exploration of what this segment of history is. Not to mention, I think the most amazing thing to me is that the film connects not only sort of China and Chinese people to the Mississippi Delta, but it also connects it to other regions within the United States. And actually, yes, it's called Far East Deep South, but the story goes beyond the Mississippi Delta. I mean, that might be something to talk about from a food perspective. That certainly is really interesting. But from a family sort of story perspective, the connection between sort of like California and all these places, like that'd be really cool to dive into.
Yeah, we should just have you do our PR. We're just going to take you everywhere, and we're just going to quote. We're just going to quote you and say, why should you see the movie? Yeah. Because Lucas says so.
And it's like so for those of you who are watching who don't know these articles I'm referring to, I'm talking about like New York Times did one. A good friend of mine did an amazing short documentary or like videos on in Al Jazeera. Right? And it's like, oh, cool accents, all these things. And I bet so many people sort of like consume this sort of like this media, and they think to themselves, oh, that's pretty cool, that's really interesting. But then when you move past it, you're like, wait, like talk to the people who are really sort of we're a part of this. There's so much more insight, right? And there's so much more stuff that's not written down, that's not in an article, that people don't about, that I really, really appreciate it. So first of all, congratulations on your film.
Thank you.
But and thank you for making it.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it resonated with you. I mean, we were hoping that what you just said is what people would get out of it, because, as much as it was about Baldwin's family and his search, it was about the greater history and the people that were there, but also the connection between the Black community and the white community, but really with the Black community, that we were all having to live in the same neighborhoods, the Chinese and the Blacks, because of segregation. And there was this kind of like, interconnected, symbiotic relationship that developed between the two communities that most people didn't know about. And you were really grateful for a lot of the African-American community that sat with us and talked with us and gave their firsthand accounts of their experience with the Chinese in the South.
Yeah, and actually, it was Mayor Johnson. Mayor Johnson was talking about how he was like, oh yeah, we love the Chinese community, because, us Black people, we love Chinese rice, right? And then he talked about, right? And then he talked about how like the Chinese in their Black community, because all the Chinese lived in the Black community, they're like, they started cooking the hog, right? They call it, pigs. Yeah. Like, they started cooking it the way Black people cook pigs, right? And I can only imagine it's probably like they're teaching them how to do that Southern Mississippi barbecue, right?
Yeah.
Like when we showed up in Mississippi, when we showed up in Pace and we met one of the mayors, it happened to be like Oktoberfest, and they were just having this beer and ribs, right?
Wow.
And we show up there, and first thing they said is, you need to jump on stage and perform, right? The second thing,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
The second thing they said was, you're coming over to the mayor's house and having ribs.
The mayor cooked us ribs. Like, only in the South does that happen, and, along with all the other fixins, right? Collard greens, coleslaw, potato salad. I mean, you name it, everything Southern. And then, you know, also with the food, one of the things that we discovered that's not in our film, but, you know, Baldwin's great-grandmother was a really good cook, and their grocery store also doubled like as a Chinese restaurant. So people would actually go down to the grocery store to have Chinese food. And, you know, one of the gentlemen described like they would have rice, and they would have like braised pork, and, you know, things that like we recognize as like, oh yeah, that's a very classic, you know, home cooked Chinese dish.
Oh, something we actually had to edit it out. She didn't want to edit it out. She wanted to keep it in, but I kind of,
the ducks.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So you know how, like, you know, we love ducks, right? You know, we like to eat duck. Well, in the back of the grocery store / home / restaurant, right, is a little tiny backyard, and my great grandmother would raise ducks in the back, and then, but she had bound feet, so she couldn't catch the ducks, right? so she would ask like the Italian kid next door at the next shop over to like come into their backyard and chase the ducks so that she could go and cook the duck afterwards.
Oh my.
So it got graphic because they would like use the back of his dad's fishing nets to like, you know, crack.
Yeah, they were describing like how these little Italian kids, you know, like walking into the backyard of a Chinese grocery store with all the black people in the front watching, right? They're going in the backyard and they chase ducks and then like snap them.
Awesome.
I'm like, oh my gosh, what a story.
And they're seung up.
Yeah, they're seung up right there.
Roasted duck.
Right?
Roasted duck.
But they were like
really interesting because it's like, I mean, it's a really difficult dish to make. Like I know a lot of us probably go to our nearest Chinatown and we get like a $4, $6 box of like roast duck over rice, but it is an intricacy, right? Obviously, in some ways, its most sort of like ultimate version is this Peking duck, but even the regular roast duck is a really difficult thing to do. I mean, I'm not surprised that immigrants are so desperate for a roast duck that they'll bring it wherever they go, or they'll find a way to make it wherever they go. My dad went to school in Canada, and as a broke college student, he would talk about him trying to like take clothes hangers and try to hang ducks inside of like the tiny convection oven in his dorm to like roast duck and stuff. And it's just so wild how people will go so Chinese people in particular will go so hard to find good ways to get, you know, good Cantonese barbecue. Wait, so the ribs, what are the ribs like in Mississippi? Is it like a brown barbecue glaze?
Yeah, that one, it was glazed, but they had some dry rub in there too. So, I mean, the mayor had like multiple style of ribs, but like the first ribs I got was, I don't know if you remember in the movie where I'm shaking this guy's hand in front of a store. Well, it was funny because like that guy was like I was walking up to him, I was like, hey, what's up? And then he goes like, I know you. I was like, oh, did we meet? He was like, you bought my ribs the other day. Because like what happened was like the mayor gave me a choice. He said, you can either buy some ribs out here with all the people in this party, or you can come back to my house. And I said to the mayor, I'm doing both. So I bought that dude's ribs. And then when I was done, I went over to his house. But yeah, I mean, he slapped on a lot of gravy, like a lot of sauce, like all over that one. And it was, and it was definitely soft. It was, I don't know how long they were cooking that thing outside in their smoke.
Ribs are a huge part of American Chinese restaurants, and I'm saying this entirely anecdotally. Ribs, people buy a lot more ribs in Black and brown neighborhoods from Chinese restaurants. So these are ribs, as in like sometimes they're like boneless. They're called boneless riblets, and they come in like metal paper bag, or they're the ones that are totally red, like glazed in a char siu type of glaze. And the bone is wrapped with a little bit of foil at the end, so you can like eat it with them and stuff. One of the guys on my team is Puerto Rican, and he has been working really hard on a Chinese Puerto Rican ribs because that was his favorite thing at his local Chinese restaurant in Queens. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, so about barbecue, on what was I going to say? Roast meat. I think I've always been curious if it was this connection of barbecue in the South, and some Chinese grocery stores were making Chinese food, and so they kind of doubled as Chinese restaurants. Do you think they were doing barbecue, or like, do you have a menu of what food they were serving in that grocery store?
No, I think a lot of it was like off the menu, or
Yeah.
maybe it was just handwritten for the, you know, the day. It was kind of like, you know, people in town knew, or maybe it was just whatever fresh ingredients they had, right? So that was the menu of the day. But what we did, we went over to our friend Gilroy Chow, who appears in our film, and he was featured in some of those articles you mentioned, like in the New York Times. And he, you know, his wife is a well-known baker, but he's also a very good cook. And one time we were at his house, and they were making tasiu fresh, but they were doing a little bit Southern style, and they were going to make like tao fan, right, from that fried rice, using that kind of style.
Yeah, like their southern fried rice. I was like, man, why does this fried rice taste so good? Like, it's so not the fried rice that I had.
He said he put it in the smoker, right?
No, I said, what's your secret ingredient? Oh, I can't tell him. I guess I'll tell you the secret ingredient. I don't know if it's that big of a secret, but I thought it was a big secret. It was bacon grease. Like, they cooked everything in bacon grease. And I was like, oh man, it just brought out this different flavor in the fried rice. It's probably one of the best fried rice I had.
Yeah. So those are like the little Southern, you know, fusion.
Yeah. I think he smoked the
he smoked something.
He smoked not smoking.
Yeah, like a smoker, like a, you know, cooking smoke or whatever.
I think he smoked the cha siu in a wok, and then in a wok outside. So he had like a big giant, like he said, it was like 100-year-old wok. It was like super big, and I think he actually marinated, and then he smoked it inside the wok, and then he covered it, and then he just went back inside for however long.
Yeah, so they were using a lot of those techniques, you know, for the Chinese food too. So that was really interesting to find out.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this sort of like regional, like how like other communities and other culinary cultures can affect the Chinese food. So just very briefly for everybody, like for when Chinese food sort of leaves, so food always leaves with people. The ideas and the techniques always move with people, right? So you have Chinese people in other countries outside of China, and they bring techniques with them, even if they might not have all of those ingredients that they used to use. A really good example is like beef and broccoli. Nowadays in the US, we make it with broccoli, but it used to be Chinese broccoli, like gailan, so you know, a substitute.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? And then, so it's really interesting to me how that symbiotic relationship between communities is as it manifests in food. People think of American Chinese food as very similar across the board, right? General Tso's chicken in Mississippi is probably very similar to General Tso's chicken in California and in New York. But there are some dishes that absorb some of like that local flavor, and then you have sort of regional American Chinese cooking.
Right.
And Louisiana has this yaka mein dish, for example. But in DC, there's like mambo sauce. There are chow mein sandwiches in the Northeast.
What? So, chow mein sandwiches?
Chow mein sandwiches are the craziest thing. I went to school in the Northeast, so I know about this. Okay, so what is chow mein to you?
Well,
there's different types of chow mein.
Yeah, see, I was going to ask you, is it a Leung Min Wong sandwich? Right? Is it?
So chow mein, you know chow mein when you buy it in like a grocery store and it comes in like a plastic bag and it just says chow mein.
Right.
Like deep fried noodles, kind of like deep fried. They're not wonton strips, but they're like hard noodles.
Oh, yeah.
It's that, and then cabbage, carrots, and a bunch of vegetables stir fried, and a really, really dark brown sauce.
Right.
So it's like a brown gravy with this deep fried stuff, both cooked inside it so it gets soggy, and some on top. And they put it on top of a bun, and then they put another bun on top of it. But there's so much sauce, and it's so wet.
It's like wet.
It's just blankets this like totally. It's impossible to pick up. And then they put just like perfunctory, just put another top bun on top of it and call it a sandwich. And it's like carve on carve on carve. It's like noodles inside of a sandwich. It doesn't make any sense. I actually have never had it to this day and talk about it all the time because of how ludicrous it is. But but there are these like regional variations that like stay in this area. It might be worth sort of jumping to talk about yaka mein a little bit before we get cooking. But yaka mein is a dish in New Orleans that is mostly sold as a hangover cure. It's often called like old sober. And yes, there is the word main in it, so it's a Chinese. It seems like a Chinese dish, but it is almost entirely made by Black American chefs. The number one proprietor of yaka mein is probably the yaka mein lady. Her name is Miss Linda Green in New Orleans. But this dish is a beef-based broth, inside that broth, nobody knows what's inside of it, but it's very savory. It's really aggressive. It's really vinegary, and it's just like the idea is that you're stumbling out of a club, you bump into somebody serving yaka mein. Chances are it's served to you in a styrofoam cup with a spork and a hard-boiled egg, chopped scallions, and maybe a couple pieces of chicken or beef or something. And it's ridiculously hot. And so when you eat it, it just like smacks you in the face, and it's like, wake up, dude! Like, come back to life. That's like Chef Kia. She describes it as it needs to be like smack your mama good. So it's a really aggressive and intense dish that has all these Chinese roots. So if we look at the ingredients, sometimes you see bean sprouts, you see chopped scallions, you'll see like bouncy egg noodles, sometimes spaghetti. You'll see like braised beef, almost like Sichuan red braised style. And the broth itself is somewhat in between, kind of like a beef MSG powder kind of broth, and
Right.
kind of like a pho type of thing, right? Kind of like bunchaway, kind of like tomatoey, Worcestershire, kind of like type
A lot
of
of flavor. A lot of flavor.
And you can identify these like Asian elements in it, but the question is like, why don't Chinese people ever make this? Chances are there was some type of like, it's like in the movie where like these communities just coming together, and yes, maybe these Chinese grocery stores and Chinese restaurants in the South were sort of erected, and they're built out of an economic necessity and not just like a camaraderie between these sort of communities,
Right.
but like a camaraderie like develops, down the road. And these are techniques, and then out comes sort of this yaka mein thing that now Chinese people don't really serve, but it's well loved in New Orleans. And there are examples like this all over the US, which is what I'm kind of like obsessed about right now.
Right. Which is really cool.
What kind of restaurant or place do you find this? Is it like in a bar? Like you're just done drinking, and then like
and then you go to the other side and you order
the
yaka
bartender
mein.
is like, give me a shot of yaka mein, right?
Exactly.
Down.
It's funny, like this yaka mein lady, Miss Linda Green's spot is when I had it, it was just like a couple of fold-out tables and like sternos, and they're just like boiling, and you're like, oh, you want? And you like put it inside, hand it to you. There are some places that are sit down, but they're all very, very sparse, and they're open obviously late night and like first thing in the morning. Yeah, and they're cooked in very small quantities because of how hot it is. It must be eaten boiling hot.
Right.
There's some like food science involved too, because if it's not hot, then the vinegar doesn't like start evaporating into your nose, and you just don't get that.
That's a great point.
Whoa,
yeah, you don't get that.
All that spices they gotta activate, and it's very much like Cantonese cooking. There's like this wok hei idea where aromatic,
Yeah.
all this stuff. So, but anyway.
Yeah. So does yaka mein actually taste better after they drink then? or can you just
all food?
All food tastes better when you drink.
I should have been drinking way more before this to make sure I get the full effect. But I've tried this dish as a hangover cure, and I will tell you, for those of you who have our kids tonight, it's different every single time I make it. I don't have a written down recipe, and there's so many elements going on that you always have to, it's probably different every single time. Which is why actually, for those of you who don't have it, I would encourage you to try making it at home. And I can talk you through some of the steps later when we're reheating it.
I like it. Yeah. That's how I cook. I always
like the
cook
DIY.
I have no recipe. Every meal I make tastes different than the previous meal.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then
it's whatever you have around, which is sometimes what happens.
That's why she calls me like the leftover king.
Yeah.
I can take anything left, and then I just turn it into like a brand new dish. I'm like, hey, this looks brand new.
He doesn't read recipes, but he will make something out of nothing.
Whatever I can find, it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Eventually.
So if there's, if people are watching live, if you have any questions for either Lucas or for Larissa and Baldwin, please do drop it in chat. I will say them out loud as we get them. But Lucas, was there anything that surprised you as you were watching the film, and that maybe continued to tickle this deep curiosity about diasporic Chinese populations in the U.S.?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier, but I was really interested in grocery stores, specifically like grocery stores as like a business, because most grocery stores outside of the South, as far as I know, are actually run by Koreans, like this Korean or Korean deli kind of idea, and Chinese people dive directly into restaurants. So I was wondering if you had any insights into why it was grocery stores, in the 19th century, I suppose, or the turn of the century rather, right? Where it's, why was it grocery stores and not restaurants like it was everywhere else in the U.S.?
Yeah, so in that area, it's much more farm-oriented, rural, obviously lots of plantations. And so they didn't have as many quote unquote restaurants, like eating out. Most people cooked at home. And since it was a large rural industry, like a lot of the towns were separated, like farther from each other. This is around the Mississippi Delta area. The initial wave of Chinese that came through were brought in to be replacement plantation workers when slavery was abolished. And then soon, those workers were like, this is not great work. We're getting paid really badly and we're working in the hot sun. And so eventually a lot of the Chinese started to pull their money together. And I think they saw an opportunity to open up grocery stores, again, because it was a necessity. Part of the issue, again, is Jim Crow era. A lot of the white stores were not friendly to the Black community. They wouldn't let them into through the front door, or even at all sometimes. And a lot of times the way the sharecroppers had to be paid, the Black community were farming through sharecropping. They only got paid once or twice a year. That's what we found out through this process. I had no idea it was that bad. And so they needed credit. And so again, white banks, white stores weren't willing to give credit. And eventually the Chinese stores, once they were established there, were able to give credit to the Black community. And the Chinese were also not allowed to open shop in predominantly white neighborhoods, for the most part. So it just happened to be that industry that there was a need. And you know how it is with every immigrant group. It's like somebody starts one, then somebody tells their mom and their uncle and their sister and their brother, and then everybody starts to train each other in those businesses. And so they happen to serve a really important need during that time.
And also, I mean, what was that need, right? The need was they lived in an area that was predominantly Black. So what were the needs of the Black community? Was their need to go out to a Chinese restaurant?
Sure.
Probably not, right? Their need was probably to be able to get some sort of groceries so that they could feed their families. And the one thing they told us was that one of the things that they told us was that even though there was segregation, there was the racism, and there were places that Chinese couldn't go, people, the group of people that were not racist towards them were the vendors that were selling like the canned goods. So like the Heinz, the Pepsis, the RC Colas, and those places, right? They didn't care if you were Chinese or Black or what, as long as you had money and you were willing to buy their goods to fill your store shelves. They just saw
green. They didn't see.
They would sell it to you, right? So it wasn't as difficult to get the stuff that fills a grocery store for a Chinese person, right? Because the vendors didn't care what race they were; they just wanted the money.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow, I never thought about that.
Yeah. But what was interesting, though, is like you think about Chinese grocery stores today, you're thinking about Chinese grocery stores sell Chinese stuff, right? But these were Chinese grocery stores that did not really sell Chinese stuff, right? They may have grown Chinese stuff in the backyard for themselves, but they were selling the stuff that everyone else
yours was Fancy Meats and Groceries was the name of his,
right?
his
so it was like a meat market.
Store.
He was a butcher, right? And they also sold like farming equipment, like in the front too. So like, because there's a lot of farmers, they get off the train and then they go and farm. So they would go in and buy supplies for their farm, like, knee pads, shovels, whatever. That's in the front of the store. And then they go get their food, and they do their shopping once a week.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, you're right. I've never thought about it that way. That there probably wasn't a need for Chinese restaurants back then.
At least not in that area, right?
Not in that particular area. Same thing with Chinese laundries, right? Like that was another question that, it got cut from our film, but, one of our historians, John Jung, did a lot of research on that and wondered that question. It's like, how come no Chinese restaurants? How come no Chinese laundry? And again, farming area, they're not wearing suits like they are in the city. They're not wearing nice clothes. So there was no need for laundry. So grocery stores were the thing. It was the goods that we're providing directly to the community that needed them.
Mm-hmm. And I bet what happened after the grocery stores? Was there a sort of, I know, people, we know that a lot of these Chinese families in the Mississippi Delta eventually sort of like left to all different parts of the country, but does it follow the similar sort of trajectory that we see today, where you don't have to work in the industry that your parents were in anymore, and you just go off to get an education and that sort of thing?
Yeah, very similar to the newer waves of immigration. They sent their kids. A lot of the kids, they were like, we don't want you. They're working grocery stores because they had to, and there was really not a lot of other options. And so they wanted their kids to have a better future. So as soon as they were able to go to colleges, they would send their kids away. They would go to Houston, LA, New York, Michigan, Chicago, wherever universities would take them. And so a lot of the kids, well, now they're like, all grandparents, great grandparents age, but like they all became doctors and pharmacists and, other professions because they wanted to get out. I mean, we had one of the few people in our film, Harold Lum, who still had owned a grocery store in the same town. He took over the family business, and his son was running the family business. But he mentioned in our film, all his 7 brothers and sisters, they all went into another profession and left the family business, while he was the only one who kept it going.
Yeah, and so contemporary times, like right now, what does the Chinese community in the Mississippi Delta look like?
There's a lot less.
There's a lot less. I mean, there is a new immigrant wave, coming from mainland China. Some of them are, students, and some of them are small business owners. Like we went to a pork rinds. Yeah. In Clarksdale.
Actually, Cracklands.
Yeah.
Right. So,
and it was owned by a Chinese family, newer immigrant family, first generation. And I mean, we just saw vats and vats of.
So you know how Cracklands was basically like it's like pork skins, right? And then they just deep fry, right? The Cracklands. Yeah. This guy's Chinese, and he came in and he was like, why only pork skins? So he started doing cracklings with duck skins and chicken skins too.
Oh, cool.
So he changed that vibe where like the South was used to just pork skins, but then he comes into Clarksdale, Mississippi, and now it's not just pork, but it's chicken and duck skins as well. And so that's kind of like what you're saying. Like, they came in here with what they knew. He came in, there was an opportunity, for him to start up something over there.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a few of the people that are in our film still reside in the Mississippi Delta, but by and large, some of the newer waves of people are, doing various businesses, and again, a lot of scholars and college students.
Yeah, and that's kind of why they started up the museum, because they knew a lot of them were leaving, and they didn't want
their history to be gone.
Their history to be gone just because people did better and moved out of the area. They wanted to preserve that history, and that's why they started up the Chinese museum over there.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah. We're getting a lot of messages that people are feeling very hungry listening to this whole conversation, which is good.
We'll let Lucas cook or tell
them. So if we could start the process going, I'm gonna actually do it too. So I'm gonna leave frame, but I'll be listening, and I will shout any catastrophes that happen in my kitchen.
Or if anybody has any questions, feel free to shout them out at us too. Okay, so. Let me just move this around. I'm going to show you what your kit looks like. What the Yakame kit kind of looks like. Here you go.
That looks really good.
So here you should have gotten 4 boxes or so, including your menu and your reheat instructions. This is the easy way to do it. But here is your kit of toppings. In your toppings, you will find a soft-boiled egg. Soft-boiled egg covered in the Cajun spice that we made also with shrimp skins. You have what we call a garlic chili. So it is our version of a kind of like a vinegary hot sauce plus Sichuan spices. In here, you're going to find basil, celery leaves, Chinese chives, onions, bean sprouts, a little bit of parsley. Here are your fresh egg noodles that were made fresh. This is a good amount of noodles for those of people who are cooking with us. So if you can't finish this, it's okay. You can actually kind of save half of it for later. Over here, you will have your beef shank that's been braised for about 5 hours or so. This is the beef 4 shank braised in a Sichuan style red braise. It's called a red braise, but it isn't quite. Oh, sorry. Are you seeing this okay?
Something. Did you go to a filter?
Your color went. There you go. Okay. Oh, that's better.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah. And then here is your yakame broth in here. So this broth is quite complicated, but we'll start heating this up first.
Is that a spicy broth?
Yes, the broth is spicy, but it's not too
spicy. Okay, so he's got his setup there. Just for the record, we do not have a kit because we're in LA, so we're going to salivate with you.
We're just going to imagine.
Yeah, so you're just using a pot there.
Is that water?
That is water. Is it magic water?
You have to dilute the broth?
So you need to cook your noodles.
Oh.
So the easiest way to do this is 2 pots. Here's 1 pot for your water. To cook the noodles in, you want to cook those noodles for about 3 minutes. And over here, you want to heat up your broth in a pot. I like to boil this broth because we're going to be adding beef to it to heat it up. But if you are really lazy and you want to do this in one pot, you can definitely microwave your broth. Just make sure that there is some spice in the bottom of the broth. That's the good stuff. Make sure you
get every drop of that broth.
Yeah. So the hack is the microwave. If you want to do it the proper kitchen way, you use the pot.
Yeah. So let me tell you about this broth real quick. So this broth over here, we cooked it overnight with beef femur bones and beef spine bones. So it's a bunch of beef. It's also got a little bit of smoked ham hock in there, Chinese style smoked ham hock and Chinese style Jinhua ham. We wanted to find that balance between Sichuan and Louisiana, which is to say that my great theory of all of this is that Louisiana in the US is like Sichuan in China. China eats so much crawfish, spicy boiled crawfish, that they are buying up the stock of Louisiana crawfish in the modern day. Both climates are rather humid. They are in sort of like valley / delta kind of areas, so it gets really wet. So they eat a lot of really spicy food to sweat all that stuff out. They both regions are copious drinkers. They eat a lot of seafood of different sorts. There's a lot of sort of like deep frying and oil, and all of it has to do with climate and that sort of thing. So whenever we're looking at Chinese Creole cooking, we want to compare those two regions. In this broth, the spices and ingredients are as follows. There is a good amount of ketchup in there. There's tomato paste for that red color. And in terms of spices, there is oregano, sweet paprika, garlic, ginger, onion, turmeric, sand ginger, cumin, black pepper, white pepper, and a lot of Worcestershire sauce and hot sauce.
A lot of Worcestershire sauce.
Yeah. So the
I like Worcestershire sauce.
Is the fish sauce of the South, basically. It doesn't really make sense on its own, to people who don't really know it. It just feels kind of weird. But when you add it to other stuff and it cooks together, it really, really becomes really savory and interesting.
What's the Chinese equivalent to Worcestershire sauce?
Actually, think so. If fish sauce is kind of the Southeast Asian equivalent, probably something like oyster sauce. Like on its own, it's kind of like a little bit too much. It's a little fishy, but when you cook it into things, it becomes really something else. Or if you dip the right things in it. So here you go. You can tell that my soup is starting to simmer. So here's your beef shank. This beef shank is soup. Right now, you see all those tendons that's holding it together. But once this heats up, it's going to get very, very, very tender. So be gentle with it. So as my broth is supposed to simmer, I'm just going to slide these in here to reheat.
That's where the magic happens, inside the pot.
Yeah. So cool thing about these beef four shanks, anybody who wants to braise beef shanks, the Chinese technique is that after you braise them, you let it sit in the braising liquid overnight so that it continues to soak up flavor as it's being cooled down. You're cooling it down so that it's stiff enough so that you can slice it really cleanly, so it doesn't break apart. So after we braise this, we let it sit overnight inside of the braising liquid, and then we mix the braising liquid back into the broth and then adjusted the seasoning. I would say that you should probably taste your broth whenever it's heated up to check the spice level and the salt level for yourself. The good thing about heating up this thing at home is that you can adjust your seasoning on your own.
Hey, how much of the flavor of the beef comes out into the broth?
A good amount, because we mix all of that braising liquid directly into the soup. So it's a significant amount. Woo! Big.
It's got some good heat on it?
Yes, it does. I love this soup because it's right in the front of your palate. There's a sharp acidity, like Frank's Red Hot, right? Or in this case, like Crystal or Louisiana hot sauce. And then there's like a deeper burn of like the savory notes and like the paprikas that's been like cooking in there for a long time. So it's really quite a complicated soup. The first time I made this, I really felt like I had no idea what I was doing because I just didn't understand this flavor profile.
Have you let anybody that's in the Black community try this yet?
Yes. So Kia, the chef that we developed this with, is Black, and she was unimpressed by our spice level the first time.
Unimpressed.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then
went
so
too
we said,
easy.
okay, yes, chef, we will up it, and then we upped it, and she finally said that. We made a big pot of this. There's a bunch extra at one of our restaurants where our chefs or cooks are eating it probably right now. The cooks, funnily enough, at Junzi, we try to make sort of proper Chinese food, but our cooks are predominantly black and brown, because that's a lot of the people who work in the food industry. It's important for me that that your restaurant is, the people who cook your food are the type of people that live in the area. So we decided to fight against the age-old myth that only Chinese people can make Chinese food.
Hey, some of my best tacos from a taco truck were like this Vietnamese couple. They were like, it was the best tacos, and all the Mexican people would go to their taco truck just because it was tacos.
It was so good. We have a similar Thai bagel place. There's no Thai elements in any of the bagels, obviously, but just so happens that it's made by Thai people. So this is boiling, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to turn this off because it's hot enough. I'm bringing it back up to a boil when my noodles are done. Over here, I have a significant simmer. I have those bubbles there, so this is probably about 85, 90 degrees Celsius. Just going to slip these noodles in here. These are egg noodles, going to take about 3 minutes. Just move them around quite a bit. I do not salt this water. This isn't pasta. There's plenty of flavor in there. You don't need to salt your water here.
Good point.
Yeah. That looks good.
Yeah, these are really.
You said those are fresh noodles? So you pull your own noodles, or?
I did not pull these, but we make them fresh with our partner out in New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, so these are egg noodles. They don't have any baking soda in them, so all the elasticity is just from gluten. So it's just from pulling and shaping that noodle. I'm gonna give myself
too much more noodles. Yeah. Yeah. Just a little bit more noodles.
Yeah, I'm a growing man.
Yeah. Need that energy.
Yeah. Over here, I will say that in your toppings box, you can drop your onions and your bean sprouts, your chives, your celery and stuff into your broth if you want it to cook a little bit more. But I actually like to eat this a little bit more like pho. So you just let the natural heat of the soup kind of like carry it over and start to wilt it. I will say that this egg is soft boiled, so the egg yolk is runny. So I suggest, for plating purposes, to slice this in half whenever you're ready. But anyway, I will say the other courses that we didn't make for you this time that are really interesting. We made a sweet potato pie inside of a sweet potato. And we brought this age-old Chinese technique that people don't know about. I bet it's the fall. A lot of you are starting to roast your sweet potatoes. The best way to roast a sweet potato is actually to freeze it first and then defrost it. If you have the time, freeze it again and defrost it again before you roast it in like a 400, 425 degree oven. What it does there is that the water inside of the sweet potato will crystallize and it'll start basically macerating. So it will start breaking the flesh of the sweet potato up. It will make it mushy and soft and tender without you cooking it, right? This is just the freezing process. So the way this would work in China is in cold areas, they would take a sweet potato, they would just put it outside, like outside their window or outside, they'd throw it outside their home, and then they come grab it the next day after it's frozen, defrost it, and do it again. And so it just like starts tenderizing inside out. The skin is intact, which is what you want, because when you roast it, you want those sugars to stay inside and like really caramelize inside of the skin in the sweet potato. And then once you see that the pressure of the potato finally gives and it starts bleeding sort of like sugar from within the sweet potato, then you know it's ready.
Wow,
that's a good point. I mean, that's just expansion of water, right? Anytime you have water in there, it expands and breaks it up.
It's really cool. In China, we do it with plums. We do it with pears. So you can like freeze a plum and then defrost it and freeze it again, and then defrost it again, and you can eat it, and it'll just be like it's kind of like jelly inside. It's like a sorbet inside. And because it's losing water too, then the less water there is, the less no flavor liquid there is.
Right, so it's more sugary.
Yeah,
right.
It's more concentrated. So yeah, a lot of these sort of like techniques you find when you're talking to other chefs from other cultures. In this case, Kia and I were working on this, and she was like, I really want to do a sweet potato pie. And I was like, wait, what if we did the sweet potato pie inside the sweet potato, and we just gave people like a crumble of oats and or pie, like pie crust, like a deconstructed pie crust, and people just topped it after it's roasted.
Once again, you're making me hungry and wishing I was there with you, because a sweet potato pie sounds really good right about now.
I'm pretty sure I'm getting some plums next week at Costco, so I'm gonna be sticking it in the freezer, and then I'm gonna take it out and then stick it back.
Yeah, it's really, really special. I worked at a fancy restaurant in northern China where that's that was the dessert. It was just a plate of frozen and defrosted plums.
I'm
Anyway,
definitely
we're at
trying.
about 4 minutes now. This will give you a noodle that is a little bit over al dente.
Oh.
If you want it really traditional, you need to overcook the heck out of these noodles. But we are
Overcooked
not
noodles,
doing that.
yes.
It's really
love
key
that.
for slurpability. But in any case, I'm pretty happy with this. So I'm just going to turn this heat off, heat up my soup on the side, and then I'm going to start plating. So...
Yeah, hope Winton's doing okay with her dish over there.
She hasn't shown
Yeah, I
up
hope
actually.
so.
Yet.
We haven't seen any smoke alarms go off or anything, so hopefully she's okay. Oh,
Doing great.
okay.
Doing
She's
great
doing
so
great.
far.
So good.
She's already eating it. She's like, I put the stove on high. I'm not simmering anything. It's on high.
So here is the egg. I'm just gonna slice it this. We can slice it. Let's slice it this way to make it pretty.
Okay. So is there a right way or wrong way? Oh, that looks nice.
Nice.
It's really beautiful. Okay, so that's that on the side. Here is the bowl. So noodles go in first. Classic kind of ramen kind of technique. You can place them just inside of your bowl first. Oops.
Yes.
Here you go.
There we go.
They're a little messy. So what you're going to do is you can kind of shimmy them and then pull it up and then fold it over.
Oh, that's the
Whoa,
technique right there. I like that.
See that? I'll do one more
That's
time.
the technique.
That
Oh,
Okay.
I like that. Yes, and then do the fold.
I feel like
Oh,
that should be in slow-mo.
that was awesome. That was awesome.
That's the restaurant trick for plating.
Yeah.
Ah.
So make sure your broth is really, really nice and hot. Again, it's really important because of the acidity. So we're gonna put down this beef.
Yeah,
Look how tender! Look how tender this thing is. You know, not a joke.
Oh, that's good.
Sichuan style Hong Shao type of beef here. So 3 down here, just like this, and then the broth is just gonna go on the side.
That looks really good.
Really want to pour it on top of the noodle because I want the noodle to still look yellow. You see how bright red that?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Like that's the hot sauce and the Worcestershire and all of it
Right.
doing what they're supposed to be doing.
For plating purposes, but when you're eating, you want to
it'll
mix
mix
it around.
up
You can't.
eventually.
Yeah.
Yep. And then here are your toppings. Here is the red onion and the bean sprouts, which we can just put on the side there.
Right.
Some of these
So you
chives.
You got chives in there.
Yep, Chinese chives. We have some slivered scallions and some celery, which I like. And then the basil is just an ode to the possible sort of Vietnamese. Possible Vietnamese contribution to this dish.
Right.
Beyond the Chinese and the Black community.
Right. That's a pretty good mix of cultures there in one dish.
Just the egg. This egg is the most important part. There is a historian in New Orleans on Bourbon Street that says the most defining characteristic of yaka mein is actually this boiled egg. So that.
Wow.
Is the yaka mein.
What's the reason for it being soft boiled as opposed to hard boiled?
I like it soft boiled because the yolk mixes into the broth, but most traditionally, it would have been hard boiled because it would be easier to handle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
There's some places that serve you the whole hard-boiled egg without cutting it in half, which is kind of crazy. Imagine picking up a boiled egg with chopsticks, taking a bite, and putting it back down. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But-
so here it is. Yaka mein. Woo!
That looks
That
beautiful.
looks good. I hope everybody.
How much meat do
you?
you use? Like how
enjoying that.
much is in there?
This we're giving people 3 slices, but actually like half a shank. It's a huge amount of food. But
Wow.
Yeah.
there we
It
go.
looks really hearty.
Yeah,
That's
it is one of my favorite things to eat. I must tell you, I've been doing distance dining for a couple of months, and this is so
Alright.
so satisfying.
So the heat level 1 to 10, what is it at? What is this at?
So right now we're probably gonna be at about a 3 or 4. This
That's not too bad.
Not that hot either. This might take it to a 6 or 7 type of level. But if you wanted to plate this, you can just dollop it on the side. That way you can mix it in, or you can kind of do a drizzle, kind of like that. So
Oh, here comes Winton.
Let's see Winton. Winton, you got to pull that camera down.
Success. Yeah.
We're gonna put them side by side with the chef, and we are the judge.
I know.
We are the judge. Come on, Winton. Pull that camera down. Don't be shy.
Or hold it up, or whichever way is easier.
No, you hold it up. It's gonna all
All
slide.
right. Yeah, I don't know if there's a way for me to do this. Well, I have a much smaller bowl, so I actually kind of reduced
How much noodles?
how much stuff is on there. But I did taste the broth before, while the reheat process. It has a kick to it, but I do like spicy food, so I'm gonna put more of the oil on.
Yeah. So for spice wimps like me, you don't have to put the extra spicy oil on. You can just go with just the broth.
But then you lose that flavor of that garlic. What was it? Garlic something.
Garlic
paste?
chili, we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Baldwin, that's right up Baldwin's alley. He likes garlic and he likes chili.
Oh, hey, that looks
Oh,
good.
very nice.
Oh, that
Nice.
was good.
Nice.
Very
Sorry,
nice.
just my tiny bowl. I don't want to tilt it too much.
Oh,
yeah.
Very good.
Nice
Very good.
job. Nice
Fill it
job.
immediately, but yeah, I'm very excited to eat. But yeah, very easy to do. And even for the people who maybe like missed the video or whatever, the card that the chef provides is super easy to read and understand. So
It's got instructions. So
it's got instructions.
You know what I feel like right now? I feel like, like the pet dog sitting at the dining table and just looking up and like
Watching people get to eat.
yeah.
We'll cook for you soon. Next time we're here or next time we're in California.
In New York or California.
there
Yeah.
you go.
We will definitely take you up on that. Yum.
So where can you find that? Like, is that dish served anywhere else other than today?
I've never seen it. I've never seen yaka mein outside
of New Orleans.
I've seen yako mein, which is a related dish that's usually not that spicy, but it's also kind of like a overcooked kind of like spaghetti noodles or egg noodles in a brown broth type of thing in some Chinese American restaurants, but it's certainly not that trendy anymore.
Right. So the noodles that you use is similar to like the wonton mee noodles, right?
This is closer.
Or no?
That looks thicker, right?
Like
More
a lo
chow
mein
mein
noodle.
Oh, it's a
lo
little
mein
thicker.
noodle.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
fresh
that's
fancy
good.
noodle.
Yes.
And so what kind of noodles do they use in the South? And is it like just spaghetti noodles then? Or are they
Spaghetti,
using egg?
overcooked spaghetti noodles is
Okay.
traditional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Love it.
Anyway,
love
cheers to you guys. Here's this
Yes.
first slurp is to you.
it. Yeah, thank
Okay,
you.
I've just got a mug, and we're just gonna
Yes.
pretend.
I need to go get some alcohol so that
But thank you, chef, for sharing that. This is my first virtual cooking demo. This is awesome. Yeah, only in the internet can you do stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
you know what I was thinking when you were cooking that? I was like, maybe part of the cuisine is like what you're eating it with. So like, because I was thinking in Mississippi, there's this restaurant there, and I've heard about it. I haven't been there, but it's a buffet style Southern all you can eat. So they have fried catfish, grits, all that stuff, right? And then right next to it is all you can eat Chinese food. So you would eat like, fried shrimp and chow mein and whatever, right? And then on the same plate, you can have your grits and your collard beans, collard greens and your fried catfish all together. And like, I'm just thinking like, just the, eating it with different foods just changes your flavor palette, right?
Yeah, it is. And it's all comfort foods. It all makes sense to eat it all together,
Yeah, I think we had talked previously about, I guess, like the steady thread of beef noodle in every kind of wherever people are going, and yeah, there is, as like somebody, whose family's from Hong Kong and who like grew up in the South, like that is what I think about is when I'm not feeling good or just needs a pick me up, a beef noodle soup.
Yeah,
will immediately kind of make me a lot happier.
What is it about beef noodle soup? I don't know.
I think it's that the
hormones.
No, I mean the broth. I mean, just the broth in this yakimen is so like hearty and like warming, even without like the added spice element.
I would say that if we're trying to actually answer the question from a historical perspective, it seems like So pho, everybody knows pho, Vietnamese pho,
Mhm.
seems to come from this area in southern China called Chiu, and Chiu
Right.
is really well known for its beef. And actually,
Mm.
Chiu is known for like beef hot pot, but really importantly, two things. Number one is the way they butcher beef and the way they treat beef, and the other one is cutting rice noodles, or like taking rice, milling it down to flour, making it into sheets, and then slicing it up, drying it, or cooking it as rice noodles. And so this sort of tradition comes with the people, and very many of the early immigrants or the early Chinese immigrants, so to speak, to Vietnam bring this with them, and suddenly there's sort of beef noodles everywhere. This is the same group of people that are right next to the Hakka, right next to the Cantonese people, the Toisan people. It's like in the same southern Chinese region, and those are the first people to leave China to go to all these different places, right?
Right.
And that, plus the fact that the other big beef place in China is Sichuan, and they start going to, there's a lot of Sichuan influence in Taiwan, for example. So then you'll have all these sort of like island sort of places where people have a propensity to move and go to other countries that also has, for whatever reason, an affinity for beef soup, beef noodle soup of different types, right? Obviously, there are hundreds and hundreds of types of beef noodle soup, and as a beef noodle soup kind of devotee, I will plug that I just put out an article in Bon Appetit about the differences in some of the beef noodle soup, but the beef noodle soup I grew up with is not like this at all. It's like clear broth, rice noodle, beef brisket, right? Like gao ge ngao lam, like that's like
Yeah,
you know. And then whereas the Taiwanese one is like heartier soy sauce, and that's right. So there's a lot of variation, and it's easy to let other people blanket all of it as, oh, it's just beef noodle soup.
Right.
There's enough nuance to be like, oh, you know, it's there's a lot of regional variation. Yeah.
Well, it's just kind of like saying that's just a burger. Yeah. Right? You can have a burger that's so everything and so different. So, you know, anywhere you go, it's a different
like a sandwich, right?
Just a burger.
That's just a vessel. But we're lucky that beef noodle soup tastes good, and there's good beef noodle soup.
I say diplomacy through beef noodle soup. We'll bring the world together.
Yes. Yaka mean for Yatko Nation.
Yatko Nation.
Yako Saikai. It'd be one world.
Yako mean for Yako Saikai. Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I think this is a good way to wrap it. I hope everybody who got the meals also was successful in heating it up and are enjoying the meals as much as I will be as soon as this call ends. And Lucas, thanks so much. Is there anything that you would like to plug or say as we wrap up?
If you wanted to follow us on our journey, looking through the Chinese cooking and all things Chinese food related, you can follow us on social media. The restaurant is Junzi Kitchen, Junzi Kitchen, and my personal handle is Lucas Sin. So that's at Lucas LUCAS.Sin SIN. We throw up all our events in New York up there. So if you're in New York, come say hi or keep an eye out for all the good things that we're doing.
Yeah, and on Lucas's Instagram too, or like he has a couple little like recipes and stories. So would recommend things that I sometimes read through when I'm hungry. I don't cook it, I just watch it. Larissa and Baldwin, the film is still available to watch at 8th. So if you haven't watched the film, and hopefully, you know, this had piqued your curiosity, please do go onto the website and watch the film. Is there anything else what you're either working on next, or anything other people should be looking out for the rest of the year and beyond?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can go to our website, fareastdeepsouth.com, for all the screening info for AIF. And, you know, if for some reason you missed AIF after this weekend, you can catch our film at some other upcoming film festivals. And you can follow us on social media on Instagram at Far East Deep South. And then our personal ones are at Larissa Lamb and at Only One MC, because we're music artists as well. So, but we have our podcast is called Love Discovery and Dim Sum. And we don't always talk about dim sum, but one of these days we'll have Lucas on, but we do talk about other. We'll talk about that on another episode. But we do talk about other aspects of history that we discover, and a lot of people don't know about. So if people are interested in hearing more, or just even interesting perspective from an Asian American viewpoint on culture and race and other current issues, they can check out our podcast, LDD Podcast.
And definitely hit us up, because especially we want to ultimately we want to educate people. We want our film and our study guide to be in our schools. We don't want this simply to be Asian American history. We want this to be American history. Just like your food, it's American food now, right? It's a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it's all American. And really, our story is really all American as well. And so, if you're connected with educators, please hit us up, or if you're an educator yourself, hit us up. I would love to talk to you guys about how our film will be available to for schools very, very soon.
Awesome. Thanks again to Lucas and Larissa and Baldwin. And thanks to the audience, especially the people who bought the packs, the kits.
Yes.
We really do appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to do more programs like this. So again, follow Junzi Kitchen for any updates on events that they'll be doing. And then keep an eye on ACV. We're always hoping to collaborate and incorporate food as much as we can into our programming. And stay tuned. We have another Q&A coming after this. So thanks for watching.
Ooh.